Greetings everyone, welcome to video number 20 in the project management series presented by Process Geekoid. Today's agenda will be going over reviewing the PMBOK process table as well as the 17th process, which is the estimate activity duration process. This process occurs at the intersection of the time knowledge area and the planning process group. As always, please subscribe, like, and comment. So let's move forward. After estimating activity resources, the next step in schedule planning is to estimate activity duration, which is the process of estimating the number of work periods, which could come in the form of hours, days, weeks, years, or sprints, 2-week sprints in the case of the Agile framework of Scrum, needed to complete each activity or set of activities in the activity list. The key benefit of this process is it provides the estimated amount of time each activity will take to complete, which is a major input into the next process of schedule planning, which is the develop schedule process. Now, for the ITTOs, inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs for estimate activity duration process are shown here. The inputs are schedule management plan, which is coming from plan schedule management, activity list, which is an output of defined activities. It identifies all the activities that need resources. Activity attributes is also an output of defined activities, which provides primary data for use in estimating resources for each activity in the activity list. Activity resource requirements is an output of estimate activity resources and identifies the types and quantities of resources required for each activity in a work package, along with aggregated data on estimated resources for each work package and work period. Resource calendars is a calendar that identifies the working days and hours that each specific team resource is available, and it contains information on the availability of resources during project execution. Next input is a project scope statement, which comes from defined scope process, and this makes sense to be an input because it gives a general idea of how long the project will be, along with any risks, assumptions, and constraints that need to be consideration for estimating the activity duration. Next, we have risk register as an input, and risk register is coming from identify risk and is part of risk planning. This makes sense to be an input here because we need to account for risk of resources being out sick or on unexpected leave. You need to be able to shuffle your resources to meet the demands of the project timeline in case there are any actively accepted risks, such as an accounting blackout period for closing the books. Another input is a resource breakdown structure, which is an output of estimate activity resource process. This is similar to the WBS, where it is a categorical breakdown of all resource types and used for tracking earned value management. It breaks down the resources needed for the project. 4 types of resources in the RVS are physical capital, equipment, human capital or your team resources, people, material, and cost. EEFs are your next input as always. These are enterprise and environmental factors that are not in the control of the project team and influence or constrain or direct a project. The examples of EEFs include resource location, availability, and skills. Another input is OPAs. It is a formal, informal, internal policies and procedures specific to scheduling and also historical information on activity duration for comparison purposes during the planning phase of schedule management. For tools, we have expert judgment. So this could be coming from a project SME for scheduling, and also it could be coming from the PMO office, project management office, to guide you, or it could come from professional organizations such as PMI to guide you. Next, we have a bunch of estimation techniques here. First one, we have analogous estimating, which is a top-down estimation technique used when you don't have enough information to begin with, and it's basically estimating duration or cost of an activity or project using historical data or parameters from similar projects that have similar duration, budget, size, weight, and complexity. So an example of analogous estimation could be you want to build a project, have a project to build a 2-floor condo in a South Dallas area, and you want to build this house down the street from where you're at. So it's with similar cost, size, weight, and complexity. Those are the key piece of knowing whether or not you're dealing with analogous estimation, is having that similarity between two types. So from your current state to where you want to be, if you want to use your previous project as a model, you have to keep that into consideration. Parametric estimation is an algorithm used to calculate cost or duration based on historical data. It uses statistical relationship between historical data and other variables to calculate an estimate for activities such as cost, budget, and duration. So in this case, you can use that South Dallas 2-floor condo example I just gave. Here, instead of having it being similar in terms of size, weight, and complexity, you have to ignore that and just compare the data, the actual information, parameters as an example to build another 2-floor townhouse, but you don't have to compare it to the similar budget or complexity or weight. That's the difference between parametric and analogous estimation. Next type of estimation is 3-point estimation technique, which includes the most likely, pessimistic, optimistic estimates as part of the PERT, or Program Evaluation Review technique. The PMP exam most likely focuses on the beta distribution flavor as opposed to the triangular distribution of the 3-point estimate. So the formula for the beta distribution of the 3-point estimation technique is the estimate is equal to optimistic plus 4 times the most likely estimate plus pessimistic, all divided by 6. So that's the formula you need to get drilled into your head. Next, group decision-making techniques is dictatorship, which is one person making the rule. That's not fair. Unanimity, all parties agree, which is more favorable. Majority, greater than 50% agree. And plurality, which is getting consensus with less than 50% of the team. That's not fair, so we don't want to do that. Then we have reserve analysis. This deals with contingency and management reserves. And a contingency reserve prepares for known unknowns, and is basically you have accepted identified risks with a defined response plan, and is part of the cost baseline, as we will see in a future video under cost planning. Management reserve is withheld for management control purposes and reserved for unknown unknowns or unforeseen work within scope of the project. This is outside of the cost baseline and is apart from the overall project budget. So the overall project budget is usually the cost baseline plus management reserves. Remember, the cost baseline includes the contingency reserves as well as the estimates from all the work packages. So I'm reiterating that point, is whenever you hear the word budget, don't just take it as a cost baseline. It includes the cost baseline plus your management reserves. So an example of a management reserve is where a manager has gone above and beyond what he gives the PM to manage the project. So as a PM, I have $15 million for a current project that a PM is working on. I told them that he has $10 million to manage the project. So here, the management reserve, the extra wiggle room that you have, is $5 million. And you build that outside of the cost baseline in case something goes wrong. The outputs then are activity duration estimates. It is a quantitative assessment of the likely number of time periods to complete an activity. Project document updates. This includes activity attributes, updates to the risk register, assumptions made in activity duration estimates, and also updates to the skill level and availability and updates to the basis of estimation. So you want to update this information as soon as you learn something new for the project to make sure that you reflect the most current data. So those are the outputs. And next slide, as a recap, This shows all the types of estimates, which will be repeated again in the estimate cost process under cost planning. So as a refresher, we have analogous estimation technique, which is where you're estimating the duration or cost of an activity or project using historical data from a similar activity or project. That's the key word, is the similarity of the complexity, size, and weight. It is used when you have a limited amount of detailed information about the project and is less costly but also less time consuming, and it's not as accurate as you'd like. 3-point estimation is using the PERT technique, uses 3 estimates to define an activity's duration, most likely, optimistic, and the pessimistic estimate. The expected duration is calculated using 2 methods here, and the triangular distribution formula is optimistic plus most likely plus pessimistic, all divided by 3. This is not as likely on the exam. The most likely tested one is going to be the beta distribution from the traditional PERT technique. It's going to be the estimate equals optimistic estimate plus 4 times most likely plus pessimistic, all divided by 6. So if you get that formula down, you should be ready for the exam. Parametric estimation is where you are going to calculate the cost or duration based on historical data and project parameters. It uses a statistical relationship between historical data and other variables. It can produce higher levels of accuracy depending on the sophistication and underlying data built in the model that you're using. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment.